For today's short meditation, let us turn our pages to 2 Chronicles chapter 1 verses 10. Here in this chapter, it talks about how Solomon prays for wisdom to God and how God answers him. I'd like somebody to read.
Give me wisdom and knowledge that I may lead his people, for who is able to govern this great people of yours.
When it comes to wisdom, once there was a Persian philosopher, and when they asked him how he had acquired so much knowledge, he answered, by not being too proud to ask questions when I was ignorant, is what he said. Here we see even though when Solomon was Israel's king, he too was willing to admit his ignorance, that he is not wise. But he wanted more than mere knowledge. And when the Lord said to him, in verse 7, we see God asks him, ask, what shall I give you? And we see Solomon made only one request. And he asked for the insight and ability to judge God's people righteously. And that was his only request. But we see God gave him what he asked. And he also added wealth and honor as a bonus. And too often, sometimes too, we want wisdom in order to achieve wealth and honor, but God does not allow us that way or work that way. He gives it to those who will honor Him. If we have some wrong desires and if we ask for wisdom, we will not be given wealth and honor. But here, even though Solomon, he asked only for wisdom, we see God also added wealth and honor. And He will do it for those who honor Him. And sometime when teenagers, when they become adults, sometimes they agonize or ask questions like, what should I do with my life? Or what I can do. And adults, they face in job changes and family responsibilities and many other making decisions. And in places like that, we need to search our hearts and ask, why do I need wisdom and where do I lack? It's obviously wisdom. And why do we need it? We need to ask in times when we face some difficult decision making in our life or don't know what to do with our life. And when we get our priorities straight, we can understand more better. When we see in James chapter 1 verses 5, James clearly says, if any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives it to all liberally, and it will be given to him. Here, you and I, we should not be ashamed of what we lack, or we should not be ignorant. We should acknowledge it, and we need to ask God where we lack, and we need to ask Him for wisdom, not in our selfish desires, but with the desire to honor God. And it's always appropriate to ask God for wisdom when our heart's desires is to honor Him. And sometimes when we lose our path, when we lose our decision making, when we lose our thoughts, and when we are not able to decide, it is always better to ask God. Just like Solomon asked for wisdom to God. And there is assurance, where we see in James, where James gives the assurance that whoever asks wisdom to God, He will surely give liberally. And with the desires to honor Him, not to the desires that pleases us, but which pleases God. And there is a quote where Dehan says that I'd like to share, where he says, O Lord, I know not where to turn, or what your path may be, so grant me wisdom to discern what you would have for me. Sometimes we may be wondering in our life what to do with our life or where are we going, but the scriptures are so clear, but we lack, and we are not to be ignorant sometimes. We need to learn. We need to face our priorities straight and ask God for wisdom. We should not be ashamed for what we lack, and we should not be dependent on ourselves, but it is better to depend on God and ask for His wisdom with the desires to honor Him, and surely God will not let us go astray, but rather He will give us more than what we asked for. Sometimes the wise decision is to make God as our teacher instead of making ourselves as a teacher. Instead of depending on our own thoughts and our own decision, it is better to take God's advice or to keep God as a teacher and ask Him for wisdom. And He will show us and He will give us the wisdom that we lack and which will honor Him. So let us try to acquire this godly wisdom from God, but not worldly wisdom. And let us try to live to please God and to honor Him. Amen.